Today, the kindergarten is on holiday. I pick up my daughter and go home. As soon as the car stops in the underground garage, my daughter whispers to me, "Dad, I found Mom's secret." I'll tell you. She is like a little adult being very cautious. So I tease her, "What secret?" My daughter says in a childish voice, "When Mom bent over today, I saw a character on Mom's waist." Why did Mom write a character on her waist? Is it because it looks good? Although my daughter learned to read very early and knows some simple things like numbers, I still think she is mistaken. First of all, my wife Violet is a tattoo designer. She often tries the design on her own body, but she has never tattooed Chinese characters on her body. Mostly they are some artistic patterns. Secondly, children at this age are prone to divergent thinking and calling a deer a horse. That character may be a pattern that looks similar. So I just laugh it off. Seeing that I am silent, my daughter says angrily that she is not wrong. I have to coax her, "Okay, okay, okay. Dad will take a look tonight to see if there is a character on Mom's waist, okay?" Only then does my daughter nod in satisfaction. At 7 o'clock, I make 4 dishes, 1 soup and baby food. After feeding my daughter and playing with her for a while and putting her to sleep, I start to tidy up things while waiting for Violet. At 10 o'clock, I finally hear a knock on the door. I excitedly open the door. Today, Violet is wearing a white silk camisole and high-waisted jeans. When she turns around to close the door, her back is particularly sexy. I can't help but hug her. "Were there many customers today? Are you tired?" Violet hands me the toolbox. Her tone is very tired. I'm quite tired. A few days ago, I met a strange customer from Guangdong. He wants to tattoo a feng shui painting on his waist. He is not satisfied with the draft I designed. I ask him to find someone else. He insists that he has had his fortune told. My shop is on the street and it brings him good luck. Regarding work, Violet has very high standards. Basically, whenever I give an opinion, she will deny it. Sometimes when she is in a hurry, she will directly show a bad temper and say, "What do you know? You haven't studied aesthetics or art." So at this time, I generally don't get involved in the discussion. I just let her eat first and think about it later. After she sits down, I go to the kitchen and stir-fry a small green vegetable. While she eats, I massage her shoulders for her. After the meal, Violet and I tidy up the table together. When she carries the plate and walks towards the kitchen, the clothes on her waist keep running up from time to time. I vaguely see a pattern of the character, and just when I subconsciously lean closer to see it more clearly, Violet is careless and the food on the plate spills all over the floor along the edge. I quickly take out 4 or 5 pieces of tissue and hand them to her. After Violet takes them, she squats on the ground to clean up. Most of the snow-white skin on her waist is inappropriately exposed. And at this time, I can clearly see that there is indeed a Chinese character tattooed on Violet's waist. But it is not the character. It is the character? My daughter only saw half of it. Looking at that horizontal, I suddenly feel a tingling sensation on my scalp. Because in the perception of adults, the things that can be associated with are definitely not just onomatopoeia. I met Violet 3 years ago during a trip. At that time, she was a graduate student at the National Institute of Arts in Nice, France. Her professor was on vacation in Switzerland. She had to take a train to discuss her thesis. The place where she got off was in the German-speaking area. Many people were not particularly good at English or French, so she got lost. I happened to pass by and took her to her destination. The story is very simple. I fell in love with her at first sight. After that, I became her admirer and rented a house near her school to accompany her in her studies. It's ridiculous to say that I always thought that if I took such good care of a girl and the girl didn't reject me, in time, I would definitely be able to marry her. But how should I put it? Whenever I talked about getting together, Violet would be like a different person. From the originally quiet and gentle little woman, she became extremely irritable and always said that I was very annoying. For this reason, I was very depressed for a period of time and always couldn't figure out what her attitude towards me was. Later, the company transferred me back to the headquarters. I said goodbye to Violet. She didn't me either. Only on the national day after I returned to Beijing, she called me and told me that her mother was urging her to get married. If I was willing, she could marry me immediately. I still had Violet in my heart at that time. Without thinking much, I agreed. From being together to getting married was only 1 month. After marriage, my role has always been to take care of Violet. Generally speaking, everything has been smooth sailing. However, after having a daughter, Violet began to become bolder. In married life, she often made me unable to resist. Later, I gradually figured out the way and began to cooperate with her. Afterwards, I touched Violet's waist and asked curiously, "Wife, why is there a character on your waist?" Violet is very sleepy. The words she utters are mumbled. What character? This is the request of that Guangdong customer. This is a feng shui picture. That customer is born in the year of the dog. A dog is only majestic when it barks. So he wants me to design the feng shui picture into the shape of the character. He said that the master said this is the breaking technique of the hexagram of thunder and water solution. Look carefully. Are there mountains and waters in this character? Listening to Violet's explanation, I feel a little sad. She works so hard and is nitpicked by all kinds of customers. And I was still suspecting. She has given birth to a daughter for me. Now my family and career are both perfect. What's there to question? Thinking of this, I hold her tighter. The next morning, I made Violet's favorite caramel pudding. After squeezing toothpaste for her, I called her to get up. When she got up, I changed into a suit and sent my daughter to school first. As soon as we left the community gate, my daughter asked me, "Dad, is that a mouth character on Mom's waist?" I shook my head. Of course not. That's Mom's tattoo design. Mom pasted it on her body to test the effect. After hearing this, my daughter frowned. I couldn't help teasing her again. Does our baby want to be a little adult again today? My daughter snorted. I don't want to be an adult. Adults all like to lie. I began to realize that there was something on my daughter's mind. I stopped the car. Our baby never lies, right? A child who doesn't lie can become a fairy. At first, my daughter lowered her head, then slowly raised it. Big tears fell down. I was extremely distressed and quickly ran to the back seat to hold her. Does our baby have something that she hasn't told Dad? If there's something in you, tell me now. You can still become a fairy. My daughter pursed her little mouth and asked, "Is it true?" I lied yesterday. That mouth character was actually written on Mom by an uncle. Uncle? That tingling feeling on my scalp from yesterday came back again. 3 At this time, I was confused. My daughter kept mentioning this matter, indicating that this matter was highly credible. Such a small child hardly has an understanding of gender relations. If she lies, it can only be about whether she participated in the event, not describing other unrelated specific scenes. But Violet's explanation is also very reasonable. Whom should I believe? I decided to investigate by myself first. After sending my daughter to kindergarten, I rented a car and followed Violet. I think if Violet has a problem, it must be outside the home. So I chose the workplace as the first surveillance location. When surveilling, my palms were all sweaty. I didn't dare to eat lunch. There was always a voice pounding in my heart. Violet was with someone else behind my back. Looking at the customers coming in and out, I became more and more restless. I couldn't wait to rush into her store and question her right now. But I also understood that once I did this, the marriage would be over. Violet didn't like being questioned and liked freedom. I remember that month when we were in love. One day, I called Violet and asked her what she was doing. Violet said, "Do you have to ask even if I'm studying? It's always these things every day. Aren't you tired of asking? Can you give me some personal space? Care about me when it's time to care. Don't always disturb me." At that time, I didn't say anything and didn't know what to reply. Maybe I loved her too much and wanted to know her situation all the time, ignoring giving her breathing space. Seeing me silent, Violet shouted at me, "If you don't know how to care, then don't care." 3 hours later, at 5 o'clock, I got out of the car and went to a nearby public restroom. Who would have thought that as soon as I got back into the car, I saw a man in a gray shirt standing at the door of Violet's store. Violet pushed the door open and came out with a big smile on her face. The man's hand gently put around Violet's shoulder, with a smile on his face. Violet was also smiling. It was extremely harmonious. This scene stung my eyes. My heart felt cold. I had to take a deep breath. After this breath, however, as long as I took a breath, my ribs would hurt terribly. I took out my phone and took a picture of the man. Then I quietly stared at every move of the two people. The two didn't know what they were talking about. After a while, Violet went into the room. When she came out again, she was carrying an underarm bag that she often carried. She left chatting and laughing with the man. I tried to force myself to be calm and wanted to start the car and follow the two people. But I didn't know where to put my hands. After finally starting the car and catching up, the two of them entered a nearby Cantonese-style tea restaurant and sat by the window. I didn't follow anymore. Firstly, there were a lot of people in the tea restaurant, so the two couldn't do much. Secondly, I was in a state at this moment that wasn't suitable for going forward. Do you understand that feeling? You have been working hard for something. Later, when you finally are qualified, that thing is destroyed. That's how I feel at this moment. The two ate for 3 hours, and I just sat there quietly for 3 hours. When the two came out, I started the car again. I felt a dryness in my eyes. When I touched them, I was crying. I rubbed my face. But at this moment, the alarm rang. I was shocked. I almost forgot to pick up my daughter. I quickly turned around and went to the chess center. My daughter likes chess. Every Wednesday and Friday after school, she will directly go to the chess center founded by her grandfather, who is a math teacher, to learn chess. When I hurried there, my daughter was sitting angrily. She was eating strawberry cake while glaring at me. Dad, you are even later than Wang Yuan's mom. I am the last one to leave now. I was both amused and helpless. Shall we surpass Wang Yuan's mom next time? My daughter, no. You have to be the first one to pick me up. I picked her up, carried her small cake, and kissed her on the face. Okay. I put my daughter in the car. Still, I couldn't help taking out my phone. Baby, take a look. Is this the uncle who rode on mommy's waist? My daughter shook her head. No. Not? That man was clearly hanging out with Violet. How could it not be him? Before I could figure it out, my daughter said loudly again. This is Uncle Fox. That one is Uncle Elephant? I was even more confused. What Uncle Fox and Uncle Elephant? Baby, Daddy can't understand what you're saying. My daughter laughed happily. Daddy is so stupid. Daddy can't understand this. There are just two uncles. Suddenly, she stopped laughing. Daddy, why are your eyes red? Did someone bully you? Baby will blow on it for you. Don't be afraid. At the moment when my daughter leaned over and hugged me, I could no longer hold back and cried softly. My daughter patted my back gently. Daddy, don't cry. Grandma said that when you grow up, you can't cry anymore. I nodded firmly. Okay, Daddy won't cry. Today, Violet still came back very late, at 12:30. This night, I wasn't sleepy at all. I tossed and turned. Finally, I opened Violet's phone. Unfortunately, I found nothing. There were no ambiguous text messages, no suspicious calls, and no suspicious expenses. I could only put her phone back in its original place. The next morning, as soon as I woke up, a pillow hit me on the head. Violet stood there, looking at me with anger on her face. Zachary, did you look through my phone, right? I didn't say anything and subconsciously thought about how Violet found out. As a result, before I could reply, Violet said, look at the battery usage time of my phone in the settings. It shows that it was in use from 2:30 to 4. At that time, only you were sleeping next to me. Say, what on earth do you want to do? Oh, so careful. At this moment, I sincerely admire Violet. Suddenly, a feeling of hate rose from the bottom of my heart. It was a sudden hate. It seemed that I woke up in an instant. I was thinking, why did I marry such a woman? Why? Oh, did I marry her to abuse myself? A plan clamored in my heart. After that, I let Violet scold and hit me. After she stopped, I said to her, I'm sorry, wife. During this time, you've been coming home late and leaving early. Sometimes there is a perfume smell on you that you've never worn before. I suspected that you had someone else outside, so I wanted to check your phone. In fact, there was no other perfume smell. I needed an excuse. After hearing this, Violet sneered. Someone else? If I had someone else, I would have divorced you long ago. In this world, there are many men who are better and more excellent than you. There are many men who chase after me, Violet. Why should I hang myself on one tree like you? She talked eloquently and was extremely angry. This was all within my expectation. As long as Violet was slightly provoked, she would fly into a rage. After she vented her anger, I hugged her tightly. Wife, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have suspected you. I know there are many men who are better and more excellent than me. But there should be no one who is stupider than me. I kept begging and vowed that I would never suspect her again. Only then did she calm down. After the commotion, I made breakfast but didn't eat it. I prepared my daughter's things and carried her downstairs. In the car, my daughter ate the egg pancake in small bites and asked me, Daddy, is it because mommy is not good that you are angry? I didn't say anything. After a long time, I looked at my daughter. Does baby want to live with daddy all the time? My daughter replied without hesitation, yes. I suddenly wanted to laugh. Generally, most children are closer to their mothers. But since my daughter was born, Violet hasn't even bathed her once. I have always taken care of my daughter's life and study. She said that taking care of her daughter would make her mind in a state of exhaustion for a long time and affect her creation. Now thinking about it, this is completely irresponsible. I held the egg pancake wrapper for my daughter and asked her again, then will baby do one thing for daddy? My daughter nodded. Okay. I kissed her forehead. Daddy is a little uncomfortable now. I might catch a cold tomorrow and won't be able to send you. Mommy will send you. This is a secret between baby and daddy. Baby can't tell anyone, okay? My daughter thought about it very seriously. Secret? Will daddy and mommy separate? I was extremely surprised. Why would she ask this? My daughter seemed a little confused. Last time I was playing on the rocking car outside the community with Grandma. Grandma asked Mommy to watch for a while. Uncle Elephant also came. He patted Mommy and said she was so bad. Grandma told me not to tell you and said this was a secret. If I told you, Daddy would think Mommy is a bad mommy and would separate from Mommy. This morning Mommy yelled at Daddy. Mommy is a bad mommy. She said these words intermittently for 5 or 6 minutes. I felt like being pricked by needles. My whole head hurt. Violet's mother knows about this thing? And still instill such thoughts in her daughter? So disgusting. It's simply insane. At this moment, I'm glad that Violet is too busy to be involved in my daughter's education. She has no idea how excellent I've taught my daughter. She still thinks her daughter knows nothing. She shows no scruples at all. At the same time, I also despise Violet. She is simply unworthy of being a mother. On the way to drive my daughter to kindergarten, my heart is constantly trembling and tears are silently flowing. After sending my daughter to kindergarten and watching her bouncing back into the classroom, I hid under a fence tree and cried out loud. At night, I was exposed to the cold wind for a long time. The next day, I began to cough and have a runny nose. My daughter's grandparents are on vacation abroad and can't come back for a while. I also told her grandparents not to let Violet have much contact with my daughter. In the end, Violet had to pick up and drop off my daughter by herself. I'm taking a gamble. I'm gambling on my detailed understanding of Violet over the past 3 years. I'm gambling that my oath to Violet yesterday will make her even more arrogant. At the same time, I also hired a tattoo enthusiast at a high price to be an apprentice in Violet's shop to help me monitor her every move. Everything is proceeding as planned. I went to the store where my daughter rides the rocking car and retrieved the surveillance footage. When the man's face appeared in the video, I felt like a fool. Because the man is my best man, Quentin, also known as Uncle Elephant in my daughter's words. Quentin is my junior. I once sponsored him to study at the National School of Fine Arts in Nice. When I introduced him to my wife, I also joked that the two of them were in the same school and 1 grade apart. They were very fated. At that time, both of them said it was an honor. At that time, my head should have been very green. Hatred is boiling in my heart. I decided to take 3-pronged measures. A week later, Violet gradually lost patience. This evening, Violet asked me, "You've had a cold for a week and it still hasn't gotten better. When will you pick up your daughter?" She has been clamoring in the car to watch something called Big Stick Chase. My phone call with a client was disturbed by her. Holding a blanket, I said quietly, "I'll ask her later." For the client side, you can explain. Spend more time with your daughter. I'll still sleep upstairs today so as not to infect you. Violet nodded. Then make me a portion of small steamed buns tomorrow morning. Sure. I am still as obedient to her as usual. After washing my hands and putting on a mask, I walked into my daughter's room. "Baby, do you want to watch Paw Patrol today?" My daughter nodded. "Yes. But Mom doesn't understand. She has been on the phone with an uncle using that pink phone." I said with a smile, "I'll tell her later, okay?" "Baby, what else did Mom do?" My daughter shook her head. "She has been on the phone." I nodded. "Did Mom take her phone when she got out of the car?" My daughter shook her head. "No. She hid the phone." She gestured. I immediately understood where it was hidden. At this moment, I breathed a sigh of relief. For a week, Violet didn't have any abnormal behavior in the store but was careless with my daughter. Late at night, I made a phone call. The next morning, when I opened my eyes, there was a noise outside the door. Half an hour later, Violet was roaring like crazy in the living room. "My car was smashed, Zachary. Wake up quickly." I got up slowly. My cold was gone. Violet was so angry that her lips were trembling. I brought her a wet towel from the bathroom. Wipe it. You're scaring your daughter. Look. Violet turned her head. Zachary, my car was smashed and everything inside is gone. I asked, what's missing? She said, a platinum bracelet and a pink phone left in the car by an employee yesterday. I remember that the first time Violet encountered a robbery was in Florence. At that time, she called me crying. I said, don't move. Stand there. I'll send a lawyer over to solve the problem for you first. Because I couldn't rule out whether there was discrimination by the local police. I always think of everything related to her thoroughly and never thought about whether she was lying. Later, she always said, you know, Zachary. With you by my side, I feel very at ease. It seems that everything can be solved. She is in the same state as she was then. I touched her head and said gently, are you sure it's a platinum bracelet and the pink phone of an employee? Violet nodded firmly. Everything in my heart is shattered and can never be picked up again. I went to the property management office to check the surveillance. The person in the surveillance had very good protective measures and the face could not be seen at all. Violet was somewhat desperate. Can't we find out anymore? I said, we can find out. Call the police. Violet immediately panicked. She was about to say something to me when a call came to her mobile phone. After she answered it, her face changed. She even walked out in a daze. I watched her back from behind and said nothing. After talking for more than 10 minutes, Violet finally turned back. Zachary, there is an urgent matter to deal with in the store. I have to leave first. Don't call the police for now. We'll talk about it later. I still nodded. Okay. After Violet had walked a few steps, I asked in a very calm voice, Violet, why can't we call the police? Violet stopped in her tracks and slowly turned back. I'll explain this to you when I come back. Explain? She probably hasn't thought of a reason yet. Shortly after she left, my mobile phone rang. After answering it, it was a woman's contemptuous voice. President Gu, it's a pleasant cooperation. Hey, I reminded you at the beginning. Violet is a bitch. Few art students are good things. You didn't listen and got stuck in it and couldn't get out. Later, I'll send the chat records to your mobile phone in the form of a video. You can take a look and you will definitely be shocked. I uttered an To be honest, I was already desperate in my heart. That feeling of loneliness and being betrayed kept colliding in the bottom of my heart, making me not even want to go home. I sat on a bench by the roadside and let the leaves of the plane trees fall on me. Soon, a file was received on my mobile phone. In the video was an app called Sugram. When opened, there was a group called Golf Lovers. There were 8 people in the group, Violet, Quentin, and 6 people I didn't know. But I recognized one of the avatars. It was the man who appeared in front of Violet's store. The chat content in the group was unbearable to look at. Seeing those words, as a big man, I was trembling all the time in discomfort. It was so dirty. How could the woman I married be so dirty? I almost vomited. For the first time, Violet was equivalent to garbage in my heart. She simply refreshed my understanding of bad women. I didn't continue watching because my tears made me unable to see the screen clearly. Those words kept shaking and couldn't be wiped clean. Tonight, Violet still came back very late, at 1 o'clock in the morning. I didn't ask her. She kept sighing. Finally, she patted my back. Honey, do you want it? I said, it's been a month. Wait until the cold is completely cured. Violet sighed. Sorry, my car was damaged by my colleague's boyfriend. Because there is something very important in her mobile phone and she is in a hurry to get it. She couldn't reach me, so she told her boyfriend. The boyfriend, drunk, directly broke my car with a window-breaking hammer. Today she apologized to me and told me not to make a fuss. She also said that she wants to break up with her boyfriend. I said, oh. She was right in the group. Even if I suspected her, she would find an excuse. Look now, how well she has covered it up. Violet got a little closer to me. Honey, can you lend me $1 million? I need it urgently. I said, I don't have any liquid funds here for the time being. You also know that the company made a long-term plan last month and the money has all been invested. Maybe later. Violet said, I need it urgently now. Can you help me? I really need it urgently, honey. In the past, when Violet needed working capital turnover, I never asked questions and gave it directly. The first bag I gave Violet was a medium-sized Neo-Classic, which cost about 20,000 yuan. By the beginning of the year, it was probably several million. At this time, I could suggest that she sell some, but I didn't. I recommended her to someone else. I know a friend. You can ask him, friend? Violet hugged me. Then can you borrow it? Since it's your friend, he will definitely lend it to you. Borrow it for me. I said, I am in a cooperation period with him. It's not appropriate to ask. The company's funds for the next quarter will arrive in 1 month. I will transfer it to him then. Violet said, thank you, honey. I said, you're welcome. I love you. This is the last time I say I love you, with deep hatred and revenge on you. The next day, I recommended my friend's contact information to Violet and then told him some things. He readily agreed to help me. In the next 3 months, everything was as usual and developed very smoothly, within my plan and control. This morning, Violet put on a beautiful makeup called matte makeup. After she finished putting on makeup, I praised, it's really beautiful. Where are you going? Standing at the door, Violet, wearing a long green silk dress, smiled at me. I'm meeting a client. Your wife is wearing such beautiful makeup. Are you jealous? I smiled and looked at a text message on my phone. Your wife has set the rallying point at number 17, Yunyao Villa. After a long time, I spat and said, Violet, you have touched my bottom line. You have chosen the location at my daughter's school district housing again. An hour later, another text message came on my phone. I bribed the property management to enter the opposite building. Your wife is really bold. She actually has half of the curtain open. Half of the curtain open? I inexplicably remembered the day when my daughter said there were words on Violet. It turned out that this was a hobby. I went downstairs, started the car, and drove to number 17, Yunyao Villa. When there were still 5 minutes drive away from the villa, I dialed 110. Hello, officer. I am Zachary. I report that someone is engaged in illegal activities at number 17, Yunyao Villa. After hanging up the phone, the long-buried hatred in my heart completely erupted. I drove the car very fast. After parking the car, I hurried upstairs. The locksmith opened the door carefully. At the moment of opening the door, a disgusting smell came from inside. Men and women. I saw Violet at a glance. She was standing by the window, and behind her was the man who went to the store to find her. When Violet saw me, her pupils dilated. She patted the man on her body in horror, randomly pulled a piece of clothing and put it on, and staggered towards me. Honey. Husband. I sneered and kicked her away. She fell to the ground unpreparedly, just like a stray dog. She crawled over again. Husband, it's not like this. I am a client, she kept explaining, but it was useless. I had already taken pictures. Standing above, I spoke out my thoughts at the bottom of my heart for the first time. Violet, you are so dirty, disgusting and dirty. I feel sick when I look at you now. As soon as I finished speaking, a group of people suddenly rushed in from behind. I think this is Sister Yao's masterpiece. Sister Yao is Quentin's wife and also the person who sent me the message. Those people beat the people in the room like crazy, including Violet. Violet was dragged on the ground. I heard others call her bitch and slut one by one. Violet's face was quickly swollen and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, but no one stopped. I just stood by and watched her being humiliated. She wanted to escape, and so did others, but the door had been blocked by several strong men. Finally, Violet began to beg for mercy. Husband. Help me. I had a cold face and didn't speak, because the sound of police sirens was heard from below. If Violet was extremely embarrassed just now she is completely frantic. She wants to escape over us. She comes over again and again and is pushed back and falls to the ground again and again. Soon, the police came, and Violet was taken away in an extremely embarrassing posture. As she passed by me, I said casually, oh, by the way, I called your parents. They are downstairs. Violet's teeth were visibly trembling. Soon, I heard a shrill roar from downstairs. You go away. I stood upstairs and was very calm. Soon, the police asked me to go for a statement. Violet was also there. Her face was badly swollen and she was wearing a piece of clothing that I didn't know who gave her. The police asked, when did you start? How many times is this? Violet was dazed. This is only the first time. Because I was too tired from work, I did something wrong. If you don't believe me, ask my husband. Husband, you say? She looked at me hopefully, her eyes full of demands. I smiled at her and said clearly to the police, as far as I know, this is the 4th time in 3 months. Moreover, she used the school district housing I bought for my daughter to harbor others. I have clear chat records here. Zachary. Violet's roar almost cut through the room. She cried and cursed me in an extremely unpleasant hoarse voice, saying that I was not human. Throughout the whole process, I was very calm. I was very glad to see those jokes in the chat records, saying that she did it for money. Violet is not short of money. This may be another kind of sentiment, but in the eyes of the police, it is not. After taking the statement, Violet was left behind. I stared into her eyes and told her, Violet, after discovering what you did, I plan to be the last straw that crushes you. So this is the feeling of trampling on a person. Later, Violet was sentenced to 4 years in prison for illegal crimes. Her parents came to see me. I held my daughter and didn't let them in. The old couple were very sad. Zachary, it's Violet's fault to do something wrong, but she is the mother of the child. The child's growth needs mother's company? Can't you do it for the sake of the child? I immediately interrupted. She has never accompanied the child, and she doesn't need to in the future. Now she comes to beg me. Why didn't you see her fooling around with other men earlier? By the way, the whole neighborhood knows about this. I plan to move away. A month later, Violet's mother died of a heart attack. I went to the prison and told Violet about this. Violet's eyes were empty and numb, and tears kept falling. She kept banging her head on the table again and again. I said coldly, your mother has heart disease. She should have been pissed off by you. Violet's lips trembled, and she couldn't say a word for a long time. Only when I turned my head did she shout, Guzareo, you are so cruel. Yes, I am cruel. It's just that I have become soft because of love for you. Before I met you, I was a very resolute man. Without relying on my family, I became the deputy general manager of the region in just 1 year. My parents asked me to dabble in many aspects and made me excellent in the business field. But after all, because of love, I became a timid sycophant in front of you. You forced me to do all this. When I explained this way, Violet cried. She put her head on the ground and kowtowed to me and cried, Guzareo, help me, okay? Please. My life can't be ruined like this. I remained unmoved. It's already ruined. The police have reported it. Your employees and your classmates all know about it. By the way, my daughter said she wants to watch Big Stick Chase, but you have been on the phone with your pink mobile phone all the time. It seemed that only at this time did Violet fully understand. She lifted up her bruised forehead. It's you. Did you plot against me? I just smiled and didn't answer. 4 years later, at Xiaoyao Square. This is a project that Sister Yao and I did at the beginning. Now it is developing very well. Today I invite her to dinner. Sister Yao looked at me with a smile. Hey, I heard that your wife was released from prison a few days ago. That night when you called and told me that Quentin was messing around outside, I wanted to kill that man. If you hadn't said you had a plan, I would have done it long ago. President Gu, I'm convinced. You sent your wife to prison step by step and also promoted me to be the deputy general manager. I said, not at all. Thanks to Sister Yao's help. Sister Yao said, however, that move is really good. I asked someone to smash Violet's car. Because she was afraid that the content on her mobile phone would be discovered, she didn't dare to call the police. Later, I threatened Quentin and made him say that he took it. I also made him tell Violet that we were going to divorce and he had to pay 2 million. Haha, that fool was afraid of me and went to find Violet and urged Violet to borrow half of the money from you. President Gu, this is also within your expectation, right? I said, well, Quentin was funded by me at the beginning. He doesn't know any rich people except for me, his sponsor. Sister Zhao said with interest, wonderful, President Gu. You have a firm grasp on human nature. But I'm quite curious. You knew she was so disgusting but still lent money? I said, well, lent it. I turned my gaze to my friend opposite. He lent it. Who paid it back? My friend said, it hasn't been paid back yet. Sister Zhao was full of interest. There must be something fishy in this, right? My friend explained, definitely. Violet and I signed a 1-month repayment agreement. Guzareo verbally told Violet that he would help pay it back after 1 month. But this is not evidence. Zachary doesn't recognize it. So I sued Violet after 1 month. With some connections, I made her a deadbeat before Violet went to prison. In fact, Violet knows nothing except art. It's easy to deal with her. President Gu is reluctant. Sister Yao said, haha. You two are so vicious. I didn't say anything, just smiled. I have experienced too many things. I can withstand any storms outside. I gave my last softness to Violet, but she personally tore it up. From behind, a cold sentence came, Zachary. I turned my head. Violet was standing there with a suitcase in hand. Her father was standing on one side. Both of them looked very old. Violet had big eye bags, deep tear troughs, and heavy dark circles. She was no longer as glamorous as before. She cried and laughed crazily. "So it's your masterpiece that I can't buy a plane ticket? You really are relentless." I looked at her directly without looking away. "Well, I would like to advise Miss Wang that as a deadbeat, you have no share in the guardianship and custody rights of your daughter. If you want to appeal, you will definitely lose." Beside her, Violet's father also shed tears. I said, "Coincidentally, neither will I. I will never forgive this selfish, irresponsible woman who trampled on my true feelings."